Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to Tarot by the Book. If you are new to this series, this is a series on my channel where I do sort of a 3-in-1 kind of video. So usually on Sundays, I put up a video where I do a 3-card week ahead spread for the collective with a deck that's been chosen randomly. And I share that reading with you, my intuitive reading based on the cards drawn. After I've given my intuitive reading, I also like to share the meanings of the cards from the guidebook for that deck. And I also like to share with you just my thoughts about how the deck generally reads, what my experiences have been with it, that kind of thing. So it's kind of like a mini review of the deck, a little bit of a deck in action, so you get to see how it reads, how it kind of performs, how it is to work with intuitively based on how I work with it anyway. And then you also get a reading and get to learn a little bit about the guidebook. Now, I always choose these decks randomly for this series, and not all of my decks have guidebooks. So this week, the deck that was chosen randomly by Peggy, because I was too lazy to throw the deck into a randomizer list, all my decks into a randomizer list, she pulled this bag off of my wall, and this is actually the Revival Art Tarot. This is a deck by Taroko Studios. Oh, it does have a little white book. Yep. It has a little white book. I thought it had no book, so we were going to use Holistic Tarot. This will be coming out at some point when I have a deck that doesn't have a guidebook, but since this one does have a little white book, it's just tiny text. We are going to use the little white book that came with the deck, so I'm going to set that aside for now, but don't worry, I'm sure we'll be getting into that one at some point in the future. So the Revival Art Tarot is a really lovely independent deck. It is available on Etsy. I believe it's still available. This deck has really beautiful matte cardstock. It's not particularly thick, but it feels really, really good. And it's super smooth. I would say it feels like it has maybe like a silk matte lamination. It doesn't have a rose petal finish, but it's like just really lovely to handle and to touch. This is a deck that's been made out of pre-existing artwork from the Revival Art period, and I will admit I know basically nothing about classical art, so I'm not going to make any more commentary on the art other than that. I will say that the artwork does not look at all blurry in person. It's very well done, and all the decorative elements on the cards and the fonts used and the labels for the and titles for the cards, they all work really well. And for me, knowing, again, basically nothing about classical art, I will say that the way that the artwork was chosen to match the meanings works really, really well for me. And that's, yeah, I really enjoy working with it. It's one of the only, possibly only classical art decks that I have, or art-based decks that I have in that way. And I normally have a real trouble working with decks that have pre-existing artwork assigned to the cards, but this one just does a really good job. So no complaints, really beautiful. Yep, that's the thing. So if you are going to be hanging around for the intuitive 3-card reading, let me give you a little bit of a heads up about how that works. So I always use 3-card positions. I pull 1 card to represent the energy of the upcoming week, 1 card to represent the obstacle, so that's the card we look at in its shadowed or reversed type way. Looking at sort of the blockage or the shadow of that card. And the 3rd card is the advice card. So we have energy, obstacle, and advice. Now with that in mind, if you would like your reading to be about a particular situation, all you have to do while I'm shuffling is focus on that particular situation and apply the messages to that situation. But I'll be speaking about the meanings of the cards as though we were reading for the week ahead. So you can interpret this reading in that way however you like. But I just like to give you the option. We're going to give it a few more shuffles, so if you are tuning in for the reading, definitely take a couple deep breaths, focus on either your week ahead or your question, and we'll get started in just a moment. All right, so we have our energy for the week ahead as the Knight of Cups. I'll be zooming us in just a moment. The obstacle for the week ahead is the 7 of Wands. And the advice for the week ahead is the 4 of Cups. Beautiful card. All right, so let's get into the intuitive message here. So our energy for the week ahead is the Knight of Cups. The Knight of Cups is somebody who leads with their heart, but they're definitely a doer. They're not somebody who just sits and waits for life and for the things that they are excited about to just happen to them. They definitely go out and get them. And when we're looking at this through the lens of the cup suit, the suit of emotion and of the heart, we're really seeing someone who is led by the heart, who is pulled in the direction of where their heart is pulling them. And I know I'm being repetitive, but I think it's a really important part of the message. And so for those of us who are looking at this as energy of the week, we're really going to have a week where our heartstrings are going to get tugged a little. We're going to feel pulled in a direction. And I think it's going to be really important to be soft and quiet enough that you can hear those messages, that you can hear where your heart is pulling you. That's definitely going to be important to the way that your week plays out. It also means that emotions may be a little bit closer to the surface, and you may also find yourself being a little more distractible, and it might be a little easier to be pulled off course this week. So keep that in mind, and notice when you're being pulled off course because of kind of a squirrely moment where maybe your heart is like, sort of like, I'd rather be doing this, or whether you're being pulled because there's actually a direction you need to follow. So you're going to really need to use your discernment this week, because the Knight of Cups is somebody who leads with the heart, but they don't always think through the action before they start moving. So you want to use that my dog is like having a good old time over here. Shayla, lay down, baby. She's like, no. So the Knight of, speaking of being easily distracted, the Knight of Cups is definitely a reminder to not get pulled too far off course this week, but definitely to be soft and to listen so you can hear those messages. When we're looking at the obstacle of the week, we have the Seven of Wands. And the Seven is very much a protective or defensive energy. Here we have somebody who has rescued this lamb from the lion. We have this figure who's like, look, I saved the lion from the lamb. And I think it's important to look at the energy of this card and consider the ramifications when we're looking at this card in the shadowed aspect, because again, we're looking at this as an obstacle. So it's as if we drew this card in the reverse. I don't read reversals. I instead look at the card positions to give me that indicator. And so this is a shadowy position. We're looking at an obstacle. And so the Seven of Wands to me is a warning that this week we may feel the need to be very overprotective or over defensive of ourselves or others. And it's going to be really important to pay attention. This is probably where the Knight of Cups is going to come in really handy. We're going to get pulled by our heart, right? Something's going to tug on the heartstrings, and we may feel like we really need to stand up and really vigorously defend ourselves or another. And because this is in the obstacle position, it tells me that perhaps we might have a tendency to overreact in that way this week. We may have a tendency to want to defend where maybe there's no need to defend, or overcorrect in the case that we are needing to defend ourselves. So keep things as much as you can in balance this week, and try to avoid that tendency to really go overboard with that defensive or protective energy. When we're looking at the advice card, we have the Four of Cups, and this is just a sweet, calm energy in this card. Fours are generally about stability, and in the cup suit, we're looking at emotional stability. And here we have some dichotomy, right? Because we have the Knight of Cups, who's speaking to more of that sort of volatile or movement-based emotional energy. And here we have the advice to kind of be still, to let things settle, to lean into that emotional stability, to be a little slower to respond, to trust in the emotional foundations that are around us, the relationships around you that you know are very good and solid. Lean into those this week, and just be mindful of perhaps that temptation to kind of go off on a wild hare, right? I don't know if that made any sense, but it made sense in my head. All right, let's take a look now at the little white book and see what it has to say. So the text is really small, so I'm probably gonna have to move it off camera to view it, but let's take a look first at the Knight of Cups. So in the Cups suit, let's see what it says. So I'm gonna hold this card up while I read it. Ooh, there we go. Card can represent proposals, offers, good news, and invitations. The news or offers he brings usually carry with them a lot of excitement. The Knight of Cups can also signify gentleness, affection, and warmth. It can also represent grace under pressure or diplomacy, so you may find yourself acting as a mediator in resolving any disputes or conflicts. If representing a person, this Knight of Cups is a charming adult who is emotional, romantic, caring, gentle, and idealistic. In a general context, the Knight of Cups reversed tarot card can represent revoked. Okay, we're not looking at this in reverse, so I'm not going to actually keep reading that whole chunk of text. It's surprising to me actually that this has as much in it as it does, because I thought it had much less text. So we're looking at somebody who's very emotional. We're also looking at it potentially as news of like so positive news. We'd be looking at proposals, offers, good news, and invitations, as well as excitement, gentleness, affection, and warmth. So these are kind of the energies of the week. So possibly some good news coming our way. The Seven of Wands. Let's take a look here. The 7, here we go. So let's pull this up. There is a great conflict approaching, but do not fear. Through courage, you will overcome this hurdle and experience a major change in your life as a result. Continue to believe in yourself. The odds may be against you, but you have the power to beat them. Now, this is the upright meaning. Let's take a look at the reversed meaning. Reversed 7 of Wands brings with it a sense of being overwhelmed by the demands of other people around you. Oh, I didn't expect that, actually. I often think of this card in the reverse as being like overprotective, overdefensive, and that's definitely what came through intuitively. But that's a really good reminder that it can also just mean feeling overwhelmed and not really sure how to defend yourself, which is really interesting. And then finally we have the 4 of Cups, so let's take a look at that. Where's our cups? Wands, Cups. So the 4 of Cups, this card can indicate that you're feeling bored or disillusioned with your life. You may be focusing on the negative or feeling like the grass is greener on the other side. You may feel like you have lost your passion and motivation for life. And I didn't actually get that from this card at all. It could be. So consider that as you move through the week. This could be the advice that you need to like remember that the grass is greener where you water it. And that's actually, you know, now that I think about it, it's not too far off from what I said intuitively, because I was talking about leaning into the stability of the relationships you do have and not really letting yourself get like swept away by any emotions that come rushing in this week with the Knight of Cups. So overall, I think those messages were congruent for sure. Again, this is the Revival Art Tarot by Taroko Studios, and you can get this on Etsy. I will try to remember to have a link down below for you, but I'll bring the guidebook in so you can see. It's called Taroko, is it focusing? Yeah, Taroko Studio, and this is the Revival Art Tarot. So thank you so much for joining me for Tarot by the Book. I really love doing these. They're super fun and they are a highlight in my week. I hope you guys love them too. I always really appreciate when you guys tell me how the messages resonated for you in the comments. I love that. Please keep doing that. I find that really enjoyable. And I will see you guys in the next video. Remember to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And remember that if you would like to book a reading with me, you can do that over at supportivetarot.com. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.